Who doesn't love a good plot twist? Whether it be in film, TV, novels, or comic books, a good story can be made great by giving the world something it just didn't expect. Over the years, Marvel has been responsible for some of the best twists in the business, or the worst, depending on your viewpoint. But no matter which side of the argument you come down on, you can't deny that each one has made for some interesting reading, if nothing else. Maybe it's the truth behind Wolverine's refusal to unsheath his claws, or maybe it's the answer to who really lurks behind XORN's mask. The truth is that if the story manages to get your pulse racing at the final reveal, there's no arguing that the writers have done their job. Now, not every entry on this list will be universally accepted as great. Some might even have had you screaming at the page, but there is no denying that each one is on here on merit. So with that in mind, I'm Will for What Culture, and here are 10 unbelievable Marvel plot twists that shocked the world. 10. SKRULL spies in Secret Invasion. When a group of superheroes consisting of Iron Man, Professor X, Doctor Strange, Black Bolt, Mr. Fantastic, and Namor decided that the SKRULL needed dealing with permanently, they do it with a show of strength. They attack the SKRULL Empire, but it doesn't go according to plan, as they're captured and studied before fashioning a great escape. Fast forward to the end of the Civil War storyline, and it's revealed that Elektra is actually a SKRULL plant, and all this kicks off the Great Secret Invasion. It turns out that the SKRULL have infiltrated nearly all points of Earth's greatest protectors, leaving spies in the place of Hank Pym, Spider-Woman, and the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., to name just a few. This puts the proverbial cat among the pigeons, meaning those who are left to fight not only have to battle the enemy, but their own paranoia, not knowing who they can trust among themselves. 9. Iron Man turns evil, dies, and is replaced by himself? Let's face fact here, the Avengers event The Crossing was not the greatest story ever told. In fact, it wasn't good at all. But it did have a WTF moment that deserves inclusion here, and that was Tony Stark turning evil, getting killed, and then returning as his teen self. Due to some shenanigans masterminded by Kang the Conqueror, Tony Stark turns into a full-on murdering machine and takes out Yellow Jackets, Gilgamesh, and Crystal's nanny for some reason. And when the rest of the Avengers finally figure out what's going on, he tries to kill all of them as well. Figuring out that the only way to best Iron Man is to go even further back in time than Kang did and bring a young version back to the future with them, they do just that. Unfortunately for teen Tony, it doesn't go quite according to plan, and adult Stark nearly kills the bejesus out of him as well. In the end, older Iron Man sacrifices himself to save everyone, leaving the younger version of himself to fill his metal shoes. 8. Wolverine kills the X-Men. Old Man Logan was a huge hit when it first appeared on shelves. Set on Earth 807128, it tells the story of a planet now divided up by supervillains, after most of the heroes are wiped out. Since that time, Wolverine had lived a quiet life, refusing to fight or draw his claws in anger. This eventually changed when a now blind Hawkeye managed to convince him to help deliver a package, setting the two friends on a long journey across the wastelands. Throughout the journey, Clint tries to find out the real reason his partner has refused to follow his natural instinct over the passing years. And when Logan finally comes clean, it is the definition of a shocking moment. It turns out that on the fateful night the X-Mansion fell, Wolverine was under the belief that it was being attacked by a group of bad guys. Doing what he did best, he fought off the attackers, only to find out that it had all been an illusion created by Mysterio, and he had, in fact, slaughtered all of the members of the X-Men. Whoops. 7. Professor X and Magneto are ONSLAUGHT. When Magneto finally decided he'd had enough of Wolverine and ripped out his adamantium skeleton, Charles Xavier decided that he'd finally had enough too. Shutting down Magneto's mind seems like a good idea, but as he does it, all Magneto's rage, anger, and taste for vengeance spills into the Professor. This causes Professor X's own personal grief at the treatment of mutants for the past 30 years to rise to the surface, spawning the entity known as ONSLAUGHT. Planning to destroy the human race by creating a second sun, it takes the combined efforts of the X-Men, the Avengers, and the Fantastic Four, as well as Doctor Doom, to bring him down, seemingly at the cost of the latter two's collective lives. The most mind-blowing part of all of this is the reveal that it's Charles Xavier who's responsible for all the chaos and carnage that happens, having finally had enough of the decades of hatred that he's had to endure. All in all, it just proves that if he wanted to, Charles Xavier could bring the world to its knees, even if it takes Magneto's influence to actually get him to do it. 6. The Thunderbolts are the masters of evil. After so many heroes seemingly died during the events of Onslaught, a new team would come to the fore in the Thunderbolts, who shouldered a lot of the responsibility in protecting the Earth. Winning over the hearts and minds of the public was very high on their list, and they set about doing so with great gusto. Though they'd show that they were all about truth, justice, and the American way, it only took the first issue of their comic before the truth is revealed. Turns out that the team was actually being run by Baron Zemo, and he planned to sell off information about the Avengers and S.H.I.E.L.D. to anyone who happened to have deep enough pockets. This reveal left the comic book fandom reeling, and was a perfect example of brilliant storytelling. In anyone else's hands, it could have been totally different, and would probably have been telegraphed from the first page, but in this instance it came together perfectly, and even though the Thunderbolts would turn on Zemo and actually become a force for good, this twist remains one of the greatest moments in their comic history. 5. Thanos wipes out half the universe. Mistress Death is a lady who is hard to please, and seeing as comic book Thanos is in the running for the world's biggest fictional simp, he does everything in the emo handbook to grab Mistress Death's attention, like building a shrine to her and trapping Nebula in a state of permanent agony, but nothing works as she continues to ignore his advances. This drives the giant purple one out of his mind, and so he snaps his fingers and straight up murders half of the universe, thus giving his paramour exactly what she wants: a whole lot of dead people. Sure, it's incredibly well known now thanks to the MCU, but up until this point in comics, this crazy level of mass destruction had basically never been seen, and in one swoop, Marvel changed the game forever. 4. Magneto is XORN. When Grant Morrison introduced XORN in the new X-Men Annual 2001, it didn't take long for the character to become a fan favourite. A captive of the Chinese government, as well as a man on the verge of suicide, it takes Cyclops reaching out to him for his sense of self to remain intact, and a job at the Institute soon follows. While here, he befriends nearly everyone he can and performs many heroic deeds, such as saving the students from certain death at the hands of the U-Men. So when he finally removes the mask and reveals himself to be none other than Magneto, it was fairly shocking to say the least. Only someone as talented as Morrison could have pulled this off with such exquisite timing, allowing you to build up a rapport with XORN that made you root for him no matter what, then pulling out the rug from beneath you in one fell swoop. 3. Norman Osborn is the Green Goblin. When the Green Goblin first flew his way into Spider-Man's world, it didn't take long for fans around the globe to start wondering who he was. Marvel played a hand in this as well, leaving clues littered throughout the comic that he was someone Peter Parker knew, and knew well. After getting his ass kicked around and then being kidnapped by the old Green Gobbo, Peter wakes up in his secret lair, where he's subjected to the classic bad guy monologue that culminates with the Emerald Elf removing his own mask, revealing that he is in fact Norman Osborn, Harry's father. Again, thanks to the film universe, this is hardly a surprise nowadays, but at the time, this was a brilliant twist that cemented the Green Goblin as the Silver Age Spider-Man's greatest foe. 2. Doc Ock is Spider-Man. When Doc Ock finally begins dying from all the injuries he's sustained over the years of supervillainy, to say he isn't happy about it is a slight understatement. So, being the genius villain he is, he decides the only rational course of action is to swap his consciousness with that of Peter Parker. And wouldn't you know it, the man who usually fails at everything he tries actually goes ahead and does it, leaving Pete to face death inside his old failing body. This is a big enough plot twist as it is, but it goes well beyond, because overwhelmed with guilt due to him inhabiting a mind that's still fresh with Peter's memories, Otto vows to change his evil ways and prove to the world that he is superior to his former nemesis in every conceivable way. Over the next 33 issues of The Superior Spider-Man, that's exactly what he sets about doing, and thus the Superior Spider-Man was born. 1. Captain America was HYDRA all along. When Steve Rogers was revealed to be a secret HYDRA agent all this time, it caused a nuclear explosion of hatred that was aimed at all those involved. It didn't matter if this was a clone of Captain America, nor did it matter that our Steve Rogers was still red, white, and blue down to the core. The fact that Marvel had the nerve to take a long-established character and change him at such a fundamental level blew so many fans' minds. The whole point of a comic twist is to reveal something you didn't see coming, and nobody, I mean nobody, saw this happening until it dropped. Eventually, of course, the original Captain America found his way back, but for a short while, the man who debuted by literally punching Hitler in the face was the poster boy for evil. And there you have it, folks, 10 unbelievable Marvel plot twists that shocked the world. Feel free to drop this video a like if you enjoyed it, and drop me a follow on Twitter at YouSlyDogU. I'm Will for What Culture Comics, thanks for hanging out, and I'll see you next time.